Uh, Welcome to A Mile Deep with me, Benjamin Owen, and Mandy Racine. Welcome.
Hi, thank you.
Oh, I'm excited. So, Mandy and I met through my partner Poppy, and I was so impressed with Mandy's credentials as a high performance coach. I don't think I've met a single high performance coach who's worked with the level of people, performers that Mandy's worked with, and she does it with such grace. You do it with such grace.
That's very kind.
Ah, tell us who you work with, Mandy.
So my background has always been in people development. I'm a coach at my heart through and through that disguised itself as an HR expert, but always trying to go that little bit deeper whenever I was working with someone. Um, and I spent 10 years almost by chance in elite sport. So I worked across Manchester United and then got poached by Manchester City after a few years. So changed clubs. I knew nothing about football. To be honest, I still know very little about football, which is probably why I was successful. I was really focused on the development, the job at hand. And after about 10 years, I decided to leave to set up my own thing, and work with the people I really wanted to work with, and be able to go that bit deeper with high performers because you notice a lot of similar patterns happening over and over. And more recently, I've worked with a brilliant high performance coaching company and their amazing clients. So companies like Amazon. I travel to the US a lot, work with their leadership team. I've worked with some really big global banks, really interesting people. But with high performers, what I kept seeing over and over again was, as a high performance coach, I will help you get that strategy down. I will help you have that conversation. I will help you get the promotion. I will help you have a better relationship with your team. I can help you do those things, and it feels quite easy, but I can see that little shard that is still causing these behaviors, that is still causing the same troubles to come up over and over again. So whether that manifests itself in perfectionism and stressing about emails at 9 o'clock on a Friday instead of having dinner with your family, um, getting up early to be on calls on a Saturday, overthinking conversations, language that you end up using with staff that is more about yourself rather than them. I see it over and over again. So I started to train as an RTT therapist because what I really want to do is just extract that belief for good, replace it with a better one, and then you go set these big goals because you're setting
Wow.
them from a completely different frame of who you are.
I imagine actually working at that level, like this is something that I was fascinated when even when we worked together,
Mhm.
was you haven't got a lot of time to prove yourself. I imagine you've got to be good quick. Like that's what I imagine at that level. You've got to prove that you can help someone solve a problem really, really quickly because you haven't got that. They'll find someone else. They'll hire
Yes.
someone else. They've got the money. They probably got the network. So you've
Yeah.
got to be good quickly. Is that true?
100% right. 100% right. And this is the thing with corporate sometimes. If you're brought in to a high performance environment to say, you got to make my team better, the CEO brings you in and says, make my leadership team better. Not everybody's bought into that. And that's
Mm.
a struggle I have because I love working with people as you would, who are like, I'm ready, I'm on receive. Tell me what I need to know. And when people aren't bought in, you're already at a -2 coming in. So
Mm.
the need to prove yourself exemplifies. But I think one thing that's really helped me in that space is my training in the psychometric tools that I've used. So I understand very, very quickly, one, where somebody's behavioral and mindset preferences are. I'll catch them really, really easily. So I know they say in sales training you mirror people, but it's so much deeper than that. The key thing for me is, how can I identify really quickly what this person is controlling for? Are they controlling for, because we're all on a spectrum. And I've spoken to you about this before. It's called Gray's reinforcement sensitivity theory. But if you are controlling for to mitigate threat, because we're on a spectrum. Are we controlling to mitigate threat, or are we controlling for opportunity? We're all on it somewhere, and some of us will be in the middle and a balance of both. But if I come in really talking about the risks, talking about the risks that I see in what you're doing or how you're doing, replaying that back from what you're telling me, and this person is controlling for reward, they're they're going to be shut off. And the very best example I have of that, which everybody will relate to and see now that I say it, is we've spoken about this, is toothpaste commercials. So if you want to know where you are on that spectrum, when a toothpaste commercial comes on, you will see 50% of them are talking about preventing cavities, avoiding gum delay. 9 out of 10 dentists recommend this for your teeth health. Very, very risk aware. We're preventing threat here, the threat of decay. 50% of them are talking about big, bright Hollywood smiles, whiter teeth in 24 hours. One of us is going to be going for that one because we want a bright Hollywood smile, and the other one will be thinking, I don't really care about that. I want to make sure my teeth aren't going to fall out. So you can pick that up in people's language very quickly, and through the right questioning, understand where they're at. That helps me communicate with them in a way that keeps their ears open and allows them to try to get more involved very quickly.
Wow. I actually because Mandy did that assessment on me, and I was like high reward, low risk. I was like, yeah,
Oh
I
yeah.
was optimizing for reward. I'm a reward guy. What was interesting, and this is like before we started the podcast, we were going to talk about Mandy's experience with high performers. Honestly, there's so much wealth of knowledge and wisdom in there. We could do a whole podcast, and we will do. And last minute, she actually said, "Oh, do you know what? It would be good to talk about the work I'm currently doing with ADHD and high performing women." And I was like, actually, like that is really, really current for me. Like I've just done a
Mhm.
video on ADHD and how I overcame some of my traits I was like self-diagnosed. I think
Mhm.
most people self-diagnose with ADHD.
Mhm.
Um, and like here's my belief, Mandy, and you can maybe help me with this, or you can challenge it, or share
Mhm.
some wisdom on it. In my experience from body transformation, people would come in, they would self-diagnose with a thyroid issue or some sort of metabolic issue, something that was broken in them, why they couldn't lose weight.
Mhm.
And that was the reason they couldn't lose weight. But they'd never even given themselves a fighting chance. They'd never stuck to a
Yeah.
plan. And this is my belief, and I could be wrong, and I'm trying to find out if I'm wrong.
Mhm.
Um, is that so many people are kind of doing the same with ADHD and
Oh,
ADD. They self-diagnose. I haven't got an attention span. I can't focus. Yada yada. But they don't give themselves a fighting chance by learning about themselves, or like I'm in a dark room right now, or they have ways of focusing that they know about. So, what's
mm.
been your experience first and foremost of ADHD, and then we're going
Mhm.
to go into women in leadership as well, and why that's so important. So, shoot,
I
what do you think?
love the way you frame that. I really love the way you frame that. Like, you just haven't given yourself a fighting chance, and I think that's a really, really powerful notion, because you're absolutely spot on. First of all, women are that lost generation, and that's coming up a lot more now because it presents itself very differently in men and women, boys and girls. So I was only diagnosed at 36, and it it was such a funny, classically dramatic of me in my head. I was like, I think I have a brain tumor, because I went through this period of, I had to like Google these symptoms, because I went through this period of just intense brain fog. And what had happened was, it was right after I left Manchester City, where I was working 6 days a week. I was working, going to the training ground for, all day, stay there, go work the match, not get home till 11. I was on constantly, constantly on, constantly stimulated. I had, contacts that were, agents or family of players who may be texting me at 5 in the morning because of the time zone difference, or at midnight. So when I woke up, I've got notifications, I've got emails coming through, I'm hyper stimulated all the time. And when I left to set my own business up, and I started working a bit with this, amazing high performance company, and learning about performance psychology in depth and going through all that, it was very 9 to 5. My schedule was just
Mm.
very, very calm. I wasn't being stimulated. And all of a sudden, I realized, like, my dopamine was on the floor, but I couldn't remember things. I had brain fog. People were speaking to me and it wasn't going in. That verbal instruction, I didn't realize I had a problem with. I don't know what you've just said. And I know I'm really good. I know I get this. and this is an amazing environment, and this is an amazing opportunity. I've got the positive mindset. Something's not clicking. And after a period of, 3 or 4 months, I was like, something's wrong with me. I think I have a brain tumor because something's happened in my brain. I was at the top of my game. I don't understand what's happening here. Thankfully, very quickly, someone was like, I can't remember who it was actually, but like, you don't have a brain tumor. You might have ADHD. I'm like, no, I don't have a lot of energy physically. It's definitely, I'm not running around, when I think of ADHD and especially around medication with ADHD, I think of that scene in There's Something About Mary where, Magda, the old neighbor, is like hoovering. She had drugs and she's hoovering under the couch. Um, I'm like, that's not me. I'm chilled out. And anyway, I went through the whole diagnosis process and I spoke to the psychiatrist and they're like, yeah, you've got like full blown
Mm.
ADHD and this is how it's presenting, which for me was really, really big drops in dopamine, the ADHD paralysis, the inability to, retain information if my dopamine's low, a host of things. And I 100% for a period of, I would say 6 to 8 months, use that as an excuse. When I was
Wow.
starting my own business and I'm trying to come up with my messaging and who I help and how do I help them, the moment it got hard, the moment it got sticky, I was like, I can't do this. It's my ADHD. I'll leave it for tomorrow. I'll leave
Mm.
it for tomorrow. I'll push it to a day when I have a free day because I still have these clients I have to serve. Even though this business is something I really, really want and I know I'm meant for, I'm going to prioritize other things because this feels hard and it's my ADHD. So I gave myself, and to a degree, still give myself way too much grace because I use it as an excuse. It was actually you who said something to me that does stick in my brain because it came out of, it was just one of those bang statements that you're
Yeah.
really good at. Just a bit of like a little post-it in the face.
Yeah.
And what you said was like, you really underestimate how much you can get done in a day. And it's so simple, but I was like, yeah, you're right. Because one thing with ADHD is if I have a meeting at 3 o'clock, I'm thinking I can't start anything until because I have a meeting at 3 o'clock. I can't do anything before then.
Yeah.
I have, for some reason, I've got to be in the zone. I've got to be prepared. But um, so I've got some, I had to get really disciplined with myself. I know now I have to move in the morning. I cannot look at my phone. That is the most poisonous thing that you can do
Mm.
first thing in the morning is get that false dopamine hit because it's going to carry through the rest of the day. Anytime something gets hard, you're going to be looking for that false dopamine hit. And we've just got to be honest about the fact that, of
Whoa, 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 whoa. I can I just pump the brakes a second there.
course,
You just said something really, really like for people to listen in and hear that is anytime things get hard, you look for that false dopamine hit. And actually, do you want a metric for this? This is like I love like
what?
wowing, not wowing, but I'm like surprising clients with this.
Yeah.
Is like just if you listen to this podcast, feel free to pause it, watching a video, go and check your pickups on your phone. So if you go into Apple and you go into the settings, and someone told me to do this, and I was like, oh no, I don't. I'm not that bad. I'm not that bad. And I was like, and they say, look at the pickups on your phone. And I had like 95, 100. And like, if you think about that, how frequently that is per hour,
Yeah.
and of that hour, how many times I'm picking that up, I was like, that's embarrassing. I was like, oh my
Mhm.
gosh, 90 pickups in a
Mhm.
day. And that was a metric that as soon as I saw it, there was like, that's not good. There's a problem
Yeah.
here. And what you
Yeah.
just said there really speaks to what I believe is that, yeah, as soon as things get hard, you check out and that's exactly the moment you need to be in. So I was like, yeah.
100%. And what's going on in your brain is you pick the phone up, open Instagram for a minute, put it down again, whoop, like little spike of dopamine. If you were
Mm.
monitoring, so you think if I do that, the pattern that's creating in your brain is I do that, I'm going to get the spike so that I can focus again. I will go get my spike from somewhere so that I can focus again. It comes from a good intention. It doesn't come from, a real
Oh,
weakness. It comes from a place of you genuinely believe that's going to help, but you don't
wow.
know that consciously.
Yeah, I see because I actually but I believe contrary to that. I believe that it's a part of you that's there to stop you from moving forwards. Like that's my
Yeah,
thinking. But I love this also it comes from a
yeah.
good place. I think both are true. I think
I
genuinely
do.
both
I
both,
do.
both are true. But that is really interesting. I've never heard that. I've probably like understood that, but
Hmm.
never really kind of, you've put it so simply. So you pick up your phone because you believe it's going to help you focus and get back into the hard thing. Is that
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. But the belief is false. The
Wow.
belief is false, but it feels it feels right because it's true that in your subconscious it believes it's the right thing to do because it's going to help you. But it is what you're saying is true as well. It is a form of self-sabotage. It is a
Mm,
form of just not of protecting you from the uncomfortable feeling of this thing I'm working on right now is getting tough. And what happens when something is tough? You start to feel bad about yourself. You start to get the little imposter doubts like, oh, I can't do this, or maybe this isn't meant for me, or why can't I crack this? Like it's all about your self-concept and what you believe to be true. And so getting that little hit of, right, we can do this, I'll just distract myself for a minute and then I'll go back to it. It comes from a good place, but it's just false. And the thing that
wow.
I really love
Yeah.
what you said again about with like using it as an excuse. It's very, very easy, and I think there's a place for that. There's a time for that. Have your little when you get diagnosed, when things are hard, have your little pity party, have it. It's not a problem, but you've got to hold yourself to a higher standard. When you
Mm,
have the information, you've got to hold yourself to a higher standard. So I know when my dopamine is low. I can feel it. I can 100%. I can feel it go physically now.
mm.
I have to make a choice. I either stay there and allow myself to go, I'm just going to have 10 minutes, watching Real Housewives of Beverly Hills to distract myself. Or but then I know 100%, 10 minutes turns into 20, turns into 30, and I still haven't done the thing I need to do. Or I get up immediately and I put music on. Music is a
Oh, nice.
true dopamine increaser. It's not a false one. 100%. And it works like that. But
Oh,
you have a choice. And I think the struggle that I see with people with ADHD, especially women, is it's when you feel like you don't have a choice. You feel powerless, you feel out of control, and there's nothing you can do about it. It's harder, and we can accept that, but you will have a choice. You do have a choice.
yeah. Do you know what? And this is something that I'm learning from working with people. I know we work together. I work with high level women, some really, really incredible women and men. And it's that I believe, and this is another belief of mine, that the more force that you have for growth, the more that you are
Mhm.
predispositioned to be a leader, to be someone
Mhm.
who's going to be pushing into hard things. It sounds like you're actually also predispositioned to fight these kind of problems like ADHD and like anxiety, like all these drivers that exist that make you perform really well are the same things that are equally destructive in your life. Is that fair from what you've seen?
100%. And I have got a question for you. I'm interested what you think about this. Um, do you think having as a leader, because you will have worked with, you're a leader in yourself, you've worked with many, many leaders. I would imagine a big proportion of them have come to you and said they feel some form of imposter syndrome.
Like it
All
comes
of
up
them.
all the time, and it may be me. I was like, I don't like people pathologizing themselves.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
like I'm so first of like I've heard that from I'd say over 80% of the people who really are pushing into hard things. It's almost like I feel
100%.
like a real imposter.
Yeah.
Who am I to? And it's normally coupled with all the shame talk and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
I know that's your zone of expertise as well.
Yeah. But one question I've never, I ask people that are in this space, not the people directly who are saying that they feel they have it, because I'm interested in it. Is first of all, nobody. This is a great statement. I think nobody who's not successful ever feels imposter syndrome. So
Mm.
the fact that you have imposter syndrome and you feel like that already shows the level that you're at. Nobody who's not doing something great feels imposter syndrome. But does your imposter syndrome, does it act as a driver for your performance or a hindrance?
Yeah, for me personally, it's a massive driver. I welcome it. and I've had moments where I've been challenged on stage. Like
Mm.
the first it was my mum. My mum used to challenge me from the back of the room, like "Shush, mum," like she used to come
Did
to my
she?
yeah.
Love
My
that.
mum used to come to my workshops, and I paid for her to come to a lot of the education stuff I went to. And she used to heckle me from the back of the room. I was
She's
like,
booing
"Mum,
you in the back.
yeah, like that's a safe heckle." She was preparing me for the real world.
I
Um,
love that.
I had a doctor one day in the front row of a talk I did, and actually came over to me at the end and challenged me quite hard on something I shared. And I was like, that was the moment I would always feared. I'd always feared that moment, that
Mm.
tap on the shoulder saying, "Who are you to be dishing out this
Mhm.
information?"
Mhm.
And it was almost that moment was I feared it so much, and when it showed up,
Mhm.
I was fine. I was like, "Oh,
Right.
it was just like, oh," and I was like, "Oh, did I get that wrong?" I was like, I'm misinformed," and I just put my hand up, and I think that's why, like, that happened when I was 22,
Yeah.
so it was quite early in my speaking career. So from
Yeah.
then on, I was like, "Do you know what? If I do get something wrong, it's not the end of the world." And obviously,
Yeah.
I'm not a surgeon. I think that you can. That's when you
Yes.
can't get things wrong. Yeah, but it's like,
Yeah.
yeah. So for me, it's a massive driver. What about you, Mandy? What do you
Yeah.
think?
I feel like it's been for me, I feel like it's been a hindrance, but there are elements that have been a driver. So imposter syndromes, there's 5 different types, and they're all the have you ever done an imposter syndrome test?
Never, never, no,
Oh,
no.
it's really cool. There's 5 different types. There's a perfectionist, there's a superhero, um, it's really quite interesting where it actually comes from, but it manifests in perfectionism, overworking, believing that your worth is based on how many hours you put in, not taking opportunities because you feel like it's nobody would ever pick you. Mine probably comes out in certain areas of perfectionism, which is quite hilarious with ADHD because there's a whole closet here that's very, very scattered. A closet of like my life that's messy and scattered and just typical ADHD. And then this other portion
Mm.
that is, I can't put a piece of social media out unless I redo it 5 times because I don't think the font is right, which is ludicrous. It's ludicrous because logically what I would say to a coachee, but emotionally, emotion trumps logic every single time. So that's something
Yeah.
I absolutely still work on. Um, but I see it a lot, a lot, a lot in the high performers that I work with. And one of them I had a call with last week. He's very senior in PR for Amazon, based in LA. And he has this great quote, like he's got such a great perspective. His comes out in different ways, very self concept led, but he kind of pushes through to get going with it. But his quote is, this is PR, not ER. Nobody's going to
Mm.
die.
Yeah, yeah, that's
Getting
good. I like
You
that.
are not going to die. And I had this moment of imposter syndrome when I first set up my business, where I was working with a police force, and I was delivering a talk on high performance in to their senior leadership team. So this was like the chief constable, like these very, very senior people who have seen some shit. They have
Mm.
like I'm like, how am I preaching to these people on what high performance is? I've worked with, respectfully, 20-year-olds who kick a ball, and I've worked with corporate people. And I mean that with total respect, because we're talking about police officers who have been in the force for 20 years and have dealt with deeper things than any of us that I've worked with or us could ever cope with. And I'm up on stage talking about, high performance and high performance mentalities and sharing a little bit about my story. And as I got up there, I love facilitating. I'm happy with 100 people in the room, never been nervous about it at all, but I could feel myself getting that shake, and I'm like, oh, it's the imposter. And you name it, you call it out straight away. That's the gremlin. It's not real, but it's there, and I feel it. And in my head, I know the first section, I'm talking a little bit about my story, my background, and I'm like, I'm gonna cry. I know I'm gonna cry. I'm gonna break. I'm gonna cry. I'm trying to be like tough in front of these like badass female officers, and I know what I'm doing, and I'm high performance. I'm like, you're gonna go. You're absolutely gonna go. And I totally cried. And I just started it and said, listen, I'm gonna say the first bit about a little bit about my background and why I'm here and why you can relate to that. I'll probably cry because I'm a little bit of a crybaby. I'm an emotional gal. I'm still awesome at my job and you're going to get some good messages out of this. And I did. So I just took a
Oh
minute.
wow.
I'll just take a sec. I'm going to have a little glass of water, get my voice back. And then I cracked on.
Yeah,
So,
I think this is actually a theme, and I've been. It's funny enough. I've been talking to clients about this recently. Is that when I go on stage, I get chalk mouth, I get
yeah.
sweaty palms, I get weak knees, and I tried to out train myself for that.
Mhm.
And I went to all sorts of speaker boot camps. I hired Andy Harrington. I went to his
Mm,
boot camp. He's amazing. Loads of framework systems, and I tried to like out educate that part of me.
mm,
It just didn't go away. You know, it was just
yeah.
I was trying to out educate that part, and then what was the best remedy for me? And like exactly what you just said there, it was to walk on stage and say, "Hey, this is me. I've got
Mhm.
chalk mouth, sweaty palms, weak knees, but I'm still going to deliver a great session." And that was like it settled me down.
Yeah.
And like 10, 15 minutes in, I was performing. And maybe this kind of does bridge back into the original thinking about what I want to talk about. Is like, I think that so many high performing women are afraid of these kind of either diagnoses or
Mhm.
parts of themselves,
Mhm.
and they perfect to try and keep them hidden, and it's
Mhm.
exhausting. It is
Mhm.
exhausting, and I think that that's probably why so many, I reckon like 40-plus-year-old women are burnt out because they spend so much of their personal energy like holding
Mhm.
themselves below
Yeah.
the surface, because like oh my, if people saw this
Yeah.
entire part of me, this wild, crazy, imperfect part of me,
Mhm.
I wouldn't be as successful as I am. I think the opposite is true. What do you think?
Without a shadow of a doubt, and that's the greatest lesson that I had learned. I tried to fit myself in a mold. When I was at Manchester United, I was in a team of very, very introverted, logical, play by the rules people who sat at their desk kind of 9 to 5. I had a great few years there, but that is not me at all. And I felt like a fish out of water. But you try to mold into what is needed in that situation. And it happens still with the most successful. I was working with someone, and this amazing woman in San Francisco, and she was multi six figures and had a brilliant team. We did a great 360 report. Her team had incredible feedback. There was so many ticks in her amazing column, but she didn't see it. She didn't see the value because her self concept has just gotten so diluted along the way.
Mm,
It's because I have to be this for this person, and to be at this company, I have to act in this way. Then what happened was she went through a divorce, which is another big thing. If you, in your mid late 30s, you go through a split where you absorb that identity of the pair, which I also went through in my early 30s. You separate and you go, well, who the hell am I? What
yeah,
do I
yeah.
actually have to offer?
There was something that you said before we came on the podcast today, and you said that you saw this in City, you see this in Amazon, you probably see
Mm,
this in women. Is that everything? Its performance is at the destruction of everything else.
yeah,
Like, because these people that you're working with are so driven for performance. I'm paraphrasing you, by the way,
yeah,
that everything in their life kind of burns to the ground. But as long as they're performing, it's fine, and it's just make it to the end. Make it to the end of the day, the week, the month, the career, and then let it go. Then you can do all the healing and I think that's what
that's
so
right.
many people do.
That's right.
Uh, it's like everything is at the and it's sad. It's sad. But
Yeah.
what is it that you're doing now to help women in that place?
Yeah. Yeah, that's absolutely correct. That was one of the things that I did struggle with internally. If, I saw a player who I knew was going through some stuff at home, or it could have been anything, but I knew was going through some stuff, but they're training well, they're performing well on the pitch, they're not having emotional outbursts, like there's no other signs that it's affecting them, but there is something that we got to work on here. The desire is not there because we all we're focused on is getting the next the next trophy or the next match, and it's understandable, and that absolutely translates into to high performance in corporate as well. Once I get that bonus, once I had I had an amazing coachee. She was in New York. She was so tough. She was like a real, like, New Yorker, super successful. she started to have vision problems because of her stress. He thought she was like me. She's like, "I think I have a brain tumor. My vision's going." I'm like, "You're in chronic stress because of this job and what you're putting out. That's not necessary,
Yeah.
by the way." And at what point is it too much? And she said, "No, I've got to wait for my shares. I got to wait for my shares to come through."
Oh my
And
God.
you're always waiting for that next external piece to fulfill you rather than going, if I do a little bit of inner work now and sort this out, that what I'm chasing is going to come to me faster. It's
Yeah.
gonna come to me faster. It's going to enhance. It's a strategy. It's not a distractor from my goals. It's a strategy to get there quicker with, with probably a better night's sleep, with better relationships, with better self-concept.
I noticed it in. I worked with a couple of barristers, lawyers, legal profession women, and it was actually interesting that they said that they would push harder because they had to, because like all of them had kids.
Mhm,
So they said like I'm recouping 3-4 years where I wasn't like in my A game. Ben, you don't
mhm,
realize it's a foot race and shit.
mhm,
And they said they were competing with the men. And I got
mhm,
it. I was like, wow, that, and it was sad. It was really sad. It's like that was what was expected of them. That's the pressure they put
mhm.
on themselves. And they had so many struggles. But another part of them was like, I'm one person at home, I'm one person at work. And
Yeah,
I saw the dissonance between that. I was like, oh my gosh, that's such a mask to be able to have
that's
to
how.
hold all the time. It must be exhausting.
Yeah,
And it was like they were all exhausted. You know, like that was something that I noticed. They
mhm,
all were super exhausted. What is it that you like? So, say for example, you've
mhm,
got a high performing woman comes in. She's
mhm,
maybe symptoms of low dopamine, or she's struggling with ADHD like symptoms. She
mhm,
can't focus. How
mhm.
do you look after her?
So the process that I like to go through is the really simple 3-step framework. So first of all, we're going to define your identity now. Who are you now? And that will cover what's going on for you, what kind of, presenting problems, for example, what kind of stresses, what do you think your strengths are? Where do you think you're really good? Give me a picture of that definition of yourself now. We're going to get really, really clear on that. And then we're going into design, which is really looking at who is it you want to be? How do you want to feel? If you're somebody who's competing against men and trying to recoup 3-4 years, why? What's the end game? Can we look at what that really looks like? We're going to get really specific because what's very hard, I think, for high achievers, sometimes outside of that external, I want the promotion or I want to have 7 figures in my business. Can we get a little bit deeper? What else do we want? What is that future vision? Because outside of those tangible things, it can be hard to articulate, and it causes a little bit of friction internally. I don't know. Why don't I know? Um, so we go through that stage, and then we go into dissolve, which is really taking out those beliefs on why they haven't, why they can't, why do you need to compete? Why are you in this competition? Why are you in this race? Maybe you started the race and you mentally checked out ages ago, but you are still pushing forward at your own personal detriment because of it. So we're going to extract that belief. And 10 out of 10 times, there's going to be a root cause of the perfectionism, of the overworking, of the negative ambition, um, that's come from childhood,
Mm.
teenage years. It doesn't have to be trauma with a big T. And my colleague and I were going to do a podcast soon on trauma with a little T versus a big T, because we all have a form of trauma with a little T. This can be something someone said to you as a child,
Mm.
a teacher, a friend in the school playground. It could have been an ex. It could have been a bit of a shitty boss who has left a little lingering notion, a little neural pathway that we go in like a dentist, extract that, we make sense of it, extract it, replace it with a new one. And that happens in 90 minutes.
Mm.
That is a literal rapid transformation, because then we go and set those big goals from a totally different self-concept.
Wow.
So if you're in a state where you feel this imposter syndrome, and I'm coming to say, let's set these big goals, you're going to do this and you were going to do that, and how would this feel, and all this great positive energy, that's great, but that self-concept hasn't changed. So
Mm.
if we can really rewrite what that is, then set those goals, you are off.
Yeah, I liken it to the analogy of if you've got the handbrake up on the car, it doesn't matter how much you put the foot down. It's really not going to go anywhere.
Yeah.
But if you've got like the all the brakes off, you just need to nudge the accelerator and you fly. It's kind of,
Yeah.
and I like that,
100%.
that distinction between the two is like, I think most motivational coaches, I think who are inexperienced, maybe uneducated, they
Mhm.
go for the like, oh, let's rev the engine, let's push the foot on the accelerator, and like they're just not listening to the fact the client is not moving because they've got this handbrake. Whereas what you're suggesting is the opposite. Is like actually remove the friction, and then when you put your foot on the accelerator, you
You're
you
free.
just you're
We're
free.
taking the
Okay.
handbrake get right out of the car. Yeah. The analogy I always use as well is these walking around with ankle weights because they're moving forward. They're going to be getting, promotions and they're going to be achieving and there's going to be things that are positive that are happening to them, but it doesn't need to feel so heavy and it doesn't need to feel so hard because you're not moving at the pace you're capable of and you're not moving with the ease that you deserve because you still have a fog, you have a film. So you just got to get rid of that and then you
Mhm.
go. But don't try to do it the other way or the risk with that. If you set me goals of I want you to get in the ice bath at 5 a.m. every day, then you're going to go for a 5K walk. Then all these things are going to be hugely beneficial for me. But am I going to do them? No, I know that. So then what's
Yeah,
going to happen? I feel bad about myself because I've let myself down again. I'm not capable. Those voices will come out. That's not what we're trying to do. We're
yeah,
strengthening the self-concept so you know exactly who you are and you're not worried about you're happy to show up authentically. You're happy to go into a meeting and say, I'm hyper emotional today. I might have a little voice like crack in my voice, I'm a bit stressed, but we'll crack on. We'll get through it.
yeah, yeah. And actually, do you know what? Like I've seen this for myself, and I've seen it for clients as well. Like I remember the day that it was literally like the day after I got divorced. It was like I found out that the relationship was over, and I was like, I want to go to work. I was like, I'm not staying at home moping around. And I went in and I stood in front of my team and I said, listen, I'm sad. I'm very sad. There's likelihoods that I might cry interruptedly, and I'm just heavy today. And if I just stood in front of my team and said that, and I even cried when probably saying that.
Mm.
And I remember just being met with more like it was just so it was amazing. When my team were just like, "Oh yeah, we love that you're here, Ben," and it was so helpful. And I think like little moments like that they're the moments that they turn around as like Ben's a great leader because he's
100%.
willing to show up like that. And I think in so many corporate spaces that is suicide. Like it actually isn't, but it's perceived as suicide.
Yeah.
And I think
And
that's
it's
what the struggle is for so many professionals, right?
Without a doubt, that actually is very, very similar. It was a similar experience my husband had when he had a team of, 65 people or something like that, and he was going through his divorce. But he's more internal. He's very private. He's very professional. So he goes in and he delivers his job. He operates with integrity. Like he's very professional. But people don't know him. They don't.
Mm,
They didn't at that time. They didn't know him. So when he was going through his separation, it was one of the hardest times of his life, and he wasn't on his A game. He would admit that he's not on his A game. The more he started to open up a little bit through coaching that he had had on his own, all of a sudden his team were like, "Dude, like, why didn't you tell us?"
yeah.
Yeah, of course, like, we're gonna cut you some slack because otherwise, when you're not, in that A game and you're trying so hard and so rigidly to be perfect 100% of the time, you're not capable of being that way if you're not, functioning highly inside because something's going on, which it's gonna happen to all of us at different stages, and it's so easy for teams to create narratives and people to create narratives and judge and, "Oh, well, they're off or they've been doing whatever, they're not, they were in a bad mood today," whatever it could be. But the more you share and you open up just that like, crack the window a little bit. It's like Johari's window of trust, right? You open it a little bit, all of a sudden, everyone's humanizing you.
Yeah.
And what happens in teams perform better, your relationships become better. It's not a huge scary thing to crack the window open and let people see who you are. But I think labels, going back to ADHD, like we create identities in ourselves. I am a high achiever. I must do this, this, and this. I have to have my shoulders back. I can't let anything, knock me. I have ADHD, so I people are going to perceive me that I'm, chaotic or I'm going to forget things or whatever an external perception of that is. And It's not true. It all comes down to owning exactly who the hell you are. But
Yeah,
you
so
gotta
true.
define who that is first.
Yeah, that's so true. Because actually, and I'm just checking in with a judgment of my own, is that
Mhm.
I see my own ADHD like behaviors as just myself. But when someone says I've got really bad ADHD, I judge them. I'm like, oh, this is going to be a scatty person. They're going to be chaos. And I'm like, actually, that isn't always true. Like my ability to hyper focus. I mean, I'll go from 9 till 5 dialed in, and I'll just be exhausted the next day. And I'll try to go back to the desk the next day, and
Mhm.
I can't do anything. There's no point in me doing any work,
Yeah.
and that's the way it shows up for me. Whereas other people, they can't sit for 20 minutes and just get dialed in, and and it's, I think that that's what we've got to do as leaders of teams, as people that support other people, is help them to see that label as a reason that they can focus, the reason they can perform, instead of a reason they can't.
Yeah.
That's the Mandy,
100%.
I think we could go a mile deep into so many different topics. I did say to this, if you've enjoyed the podcast today, I've got all of Mandy's links and all the things where you can contact her in the description. Please do so. She is world class at what she do. If you're a high performing woman who is looking, is it, do you work with men too as well?
I do. I do.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, men and women. Sorry, I
Yeah.
do apologize.
All right.
Because I know you've got a retreat coming up.
I do. I have an ADHD retreat coming up in Cheshire in England in January, where we're going to be looking at all understanding the brain, maximizing it. We're going to have breathwork sessions. We're going to have some amazing expert talks and just connect with other high achievers who have the same symptoms, the same issues, but also the same super strengths. So it's a really great networking opportunity as well. We're so excited. My business partner and I are just thrilled about it. It's so
It
needed.
makes me laugh. Like, imagine a room full of people with ADHD. It's
We're
like,
gonna it's gonna be chaos. No.
no, it's just funny.
No, like you say, it's actually we've got a couple people who have signed up already, pre-signed up, who don't have ADHD, but
Yeah, yeah,
talks around your nervous system regulation, what executive dysfunction can look like, raising your dopamine levels naturally. They want to perform in their role, and that is going to help regardless. These
yeah.
whether you have ADHD or not.
No, you know, it was just funny because I even made a 25-minute long ADHD video the other day, and the irony is, like, I didn't think that someone with ADHD would get to the end. Yeah,
Yeah, that's
exactly. The irony was
this is a
huge.
funny thing when we're going through the itinerary as well. We're keeping the talks to 15 minutes, and we're
Brilliant.
doing all the talks after an activity where we know dopamine's going to be high, so they're most on receive.
There you
And then
go.
we've actually built in paralysis breaks, so it'll be 2 to 2:30. Just go stare at the wall in your bedroom.
Yeah, that's so good.
You'll have
That,
your paralysis.
you
We
know
get
what?
it.
If you are considering going, what I can guarantee just from spending time with Mandy, you are going to get the best of the best knowledge, wisdom, practical stuff, also it's going to be bougie as well, because that's
Oh, it's bougie.
yeah,
It's at a
yeah,
it's
yeah. Mandy's
we
super
have a
bougie.
great
I remember, before closing, like, I remember Mandy was coming for a day with me where we were just doing some whiteboarding together, and Poppy, who knows Mandy, she said, Ben, where are you taking Mandy for the whiteboarding session? I was like, oh, just the back room in the gym, and she was like, Ben,
time.
this is this is Mandy. And I was like, she like, no, she needs luxury. And I was like, hey, listen, I remember apologizing profusely. I was like, listen, this is what we've got today. And it's like, but
It was great.
I imagine the retreats in a beautiful space,
It's
really
gorgeous.
luxury. I'll put
Yeah.
the link in the comments, by the way. So if you watch the video, or listen to the podcast, it will be in the comments. Go check it out. Share it with someone who would benefit from this. More people need to know about Mandy's work. Thank you so much for coming on today, and you're going to definitely have you on again.
Oh, Ben, thank you so much. I appreciate you so much. You are one of a kind, and I'm so happy that our paths cross because you offer infinite value every time we chat. So thank you so much.
There we go. Thank you so much.